This episode was sponsored by Showbiz Management, Vancouver's premier talent agency providing background performers and actors for all areas of media, including film, television, commercials, music videos, documentaries, and much more. So if your production needs performers or you want to be a background performer yourself, please visit them at www.showbizmanagement.com or call them at 604-435-7469. That's Showbiz Management, providing quality performers since 1993. Welcome to the Tons of Productions podcast on this Monday, September 2nd, 2019. Today I have a chat with Cade. He has been a background performer for 16 years, and I've known him for just over 10 years. It is a great interview, and if you're just new into film, you'll really enjoy it. There's a lot of stories about being on set, and I love talking to him. So here you go. Here is Cade. You are listening to the Tons of Productions podcast. Hey, Cade, how's it going?
Good. I looked at your film list, you sort of all the productions you worked on in your book.
Oh, yeah, and they're not even all of them.
Right, just however many were there. And I was like, oh, I've been on this and this and this and this, like at least 10 of those.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, like Psych, some of these I was like, what is this? Oh, yeah, no, I was on that. Let me see. Dybbuk Box, I stood in for Mattis Yahoo.
Nice.
Yeah, he's a real nice guy. What else? Fringe, yep. Arrow, yes. What's this? Mission Impossible, no. The Killing, I was on. The L Word, I was on. Psych, I was on. Reaper, I was on. Watchmen, I was on. Smallville, Supernatural, Stargate Atlantis. I've been on, quite a few of these, at least a third of however many you wrote down here, but I'm sure there was way more.
Yeah.
Dybbuk Box was cool.
Dybbuk Box was awesome. That was when they shaved my head. This is when I was cutting my hair off. Okay. And they kept long hair attached to where your sideburns go. Yeah. And that was for me being a Hasidic Jew. Exactly. And then they dressed me up like a Hasidic Jew, and I had to walk it. It was really cool.
Wow, huh. Do you know that they changed the name? That was only the shooting title.
Oh,
Dybbuk
okay.
Box.
What was the movie called?
I think it's called The Possession or something like that.
Oh, see.
Yeah.
How many times do I have done shows and they didn't even know the name? Like TV shows, of course, you know the name, but I mean, with movies, you don't know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So you've been doing background since, 2003 was your first?
2003, yep. The Chronicles of Riddick.
That's right.
Yeah. It was kind of interesting. I wasn't even expecting to work on that. Like I went to an open casting call for the agency I work for still, and
just so people know, we both worked for the same. Well, I used to, and he still does. It's Showbiz.
Showbiz, yeah, they've always been great.
Super nice guys, super nice people.
Yeah, so I just got this call. I was working on some, basically I went for the open, casting audition, whatever it was, and they just took our photos and then, of course, they didn't call right away. And
So
I had to get some other job, and it was like this telemarketing job, raising money for charity and stuff like that. It was just like, this is temporary, I needed to pay the rent. And, but I was super good at it, apparently. And I was drinking with the bosses, after a couple of weeks, and I just get this call from my agent, who's, at the time. And he was like, oh, hey, tomorrow, can you do this movie? Vin Diesel movie. I was like, Vin Diesel? Wow, that's cool. Because he was 2003.
He was big at the time, for sure.
He was huge. Vin Diesel was, one of the biggest stars at the time, especially. And I was like, Vin Diesel? Well, maybe. Where do I have to go? What time is it? And all this stuff. Well, it's out in, what was it, Burnaby, I guess. It was at Mammoth Studios.
Right, where they filmed a lot of big movies there.
A lot of big movies, yeah. And so I was like, okay, what time do I have to be there? And it's 7 or something, really early. And I was like, oh, okay, how much am I going to get paid? And he's like, minimum wage basically, or like a little more. And I was like, oh, well, I'm actually making more, doing this job, and I don't have to wake up that early. Like,
Yeah, I don't think so.
that's what I said. I was like, no, thanks, thanks, but no, that sounds like a hassle. And then he calls me back a little while later. He's like, well, actually, I found out you're going to be on union permits. You're actually going to get whatever it was, more money than I was getting for that job. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I was like kind of drunk with my bosses, like I said. And I was like, okay, guys, they want me to work on some movie tomorrow morning. Is that cool? Like, if I don't come in? And they're like, yeah, movie? Vin Diesel? Go for it. And I was like, all right. So I went and did that. That's nice. Yeah, they were super cool. And went and did that, and they just keep calling me. So I just keep going, and...
and it's been years and years, and you're still doing it, and... it was one of my favorite things. I love doing background. Do you ever see that show, Extras?
Yes, I love that show.
Yeah, there was. I was already doing it before the show came out or whatever. Because
2009 or something.
Anyway, I'd already done background and loved it, and realized it was becoming bigger and bigger. When I first started, that's when they had the writer strike, and then it just dried up.
Yeah, that was really rough. I remember that.
A lot of people were out of work, and it was like, because it employs, I bet you the film industry at that time maybe employed probably 50,000 people, like a lot of people.
Yeah, I held out for a long time.
A lot of us did.
Because I did not want to go back to like having a sort of a normal job. But eventually I had to. I did security for, a year, a little more than a year.
I did security at Bridge Studios.
Oh, yeah, right.
That's hilarious, right? Oh.
Yeah. And it's funny because as soon as I started doing security, I started getting calls from my agent again. All of a sudden it's picking up. I'm like, where were you 2 months ago? I mean, it wasn't his fault.
No, it's not their fault, but yeah.
But it was just, now it's picking up. So a few times I went and worked on a couple of shows while I was doing security. I was asking them for days off, and they were giving it to me here and there. But, they had to find someone to replace me in the security job. But anyway, I didn't like that job anyway. So I just went back to film. They keep calling. And so I guess when you look a little different, night at the museum.
Yeah.
I looked really good in a Viking costume.
Well, that's so the listeners know you have a huge beard, and that's and so that's like a kind of a niche look. Like in film, there's certain productions that look for certain looks. So you can imagine when they cast for something like World of Warcraft, they want everyone who already has long hair and a big beard because that was the times or whatever they're going for. And when I met you, it was I believe a Western. It was an auction. It took place back in the, I don't know, late 1800s or something. It was like horse and carriage days or whatever.
Yeah, but they did have cash. I remember they gave me cash.
Oh, yeah.
And I had some like weird little old bills. But,
that's right. And it was some sort of auction. And then after that, we went to Agitan Studios, and it was all night, and they were doing these. It was raining hard, and they were doing these scenes. They had built up this kind of roadway that was older, and they had like big stoops and stairways that came into the road, and they had like a brick road, so it was an old timey.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. I think that's the one where where they were like, does anyone smoke cigarettes? We want people that smoke cigarettes.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah. And I was rolling my own cigarettes at the time. And so I kept, like every take, I'd have to roll another cigarette. And I was just getting like so many.
They made me smoke a cigar. I said, I got my own cigarette. So they're like, no. You got to smoke a cigar. And they're like, the first scene we did, I was a person just at the auction, and I was all dressed up, and they'd done my hair and what I'm wearing and stuff. So, and then later on in the day, I was a different character. I was a homeless guy in the late 1800s, right? And they had gloves on me with the fingers cut off, and I was dressed up like, even back then, you're wearing, like a homeless guy's wearing a vest and a hat. Like,
yeah.
And they had me smoke a cigar, and that's what I had to do. I had to drink this. It was Gatorade in a beer bottle, and
right.
And then the cigar, and then I had to sit there and smoke this gross cigar too.
And it wasn't even tobacco, probably, right? It's like a fake...
Oh, it was tobacco.
Okay, it was,
but it was dry and old and not.
It's
good
prop
cigar.
tobacco.
Yeah, prop.
Prop tobacco.
Have you ever smoked? Speaking of smoking, now we get on that topic. You ever smoked fake weed?
I don't think I've smoked fake weed. I definitely smoked fake cigarettes, like those clove cigarettes.
Oh yeah,
They're horrible.
they are horrible.
Yeah, no, I'm not a fan of those clove cigarettes. That's for sure. But fake weed, no, I don't think so.
I have. I worked on a production that had fake weed, and that was the deal. I heard though there was a couple shows that used real weed.
There was one show I was on. They had real weed.
Real weed.
Real weed.
And like that was before legalization in Canada.
It was. I didn't know how they did it or why they did that. Or
Well, we're in Vancouver.
I'm not going to rat them out.
No. But who cares? Like, as far as I'm concerned, it's realism. It's good.
Well, you might as well. Why waste the time?
Yeah.
Dressing some, spices up to look like weed when there's weed. But it was plants that were all ripped down. And I was like, oh, look at this room. Look at this plants over here. And I went and checked it out. And I was like, oh my God, this is real weed. And I talked to the props guy. I'm like, this is real weed. And he's like, yeah, I know. I'm like, I didn't know you could do that. But whatever,
And it was like one of the first times I've seen it in productions like that where it was a professional production and open and no one cared. But it became more acceptable as time's gone on, and now it's legal. And
there's been a few times I've been on set, and there's cops, there's people dressed as cops, in the show, and you can't tell the difference sometimes because like there's one show, I don't remember which one it was, but they actually had real Vancouver police uniforms, like they look like real cops.
Oh, it was like it took place here, the show.
Yeah. Anyway, a couple times I thought I'm talking to a random extra who's playing a cop that day. No, it's a real cop. I'm like, oh, you're actually a cop. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Seems like a good gig for them.
Oh yeah, they get paid. I forget what they pay them. It's like it's a lot of money though.
Yeah.
For a 12-hour shift, they get paid something like $500 or maybe more. I don't even know. A lot of money though. For one shift.
And the thing is, like, a PA is going to tell a crowd, like, or, people walking down the street, like, you can't go down here. Just wait until we cut, and then you can go down. But some people are just going to be like, screw you. Who cares? You know what I mean? I walk down the street every day. Why do I have to listen to you? But if it's a police officer telling them that, then they're like, okay, I have to listen. So I think that's why they hire the cops.
Oh no, I've been in situations as a PA on the side of the road where there is like, say, some crazy, wasted, homeless dude, coming up and going, and trying to walk into set, and you have to block them, and you're not supposed to let them go into set and not ruin it. And in that situation, I always pull the cop card. I always just say, like, all right, you get out of my way, I can do whatever I want. And they're almost like picking a fight with you and whatever. And then I say, okay, I'll let you go. I'll just tell the police officer over here. And as soon as they hear police officer, they're out.
Yeah.
They're like, man. What? I'm like, oh, there's a police officer right there. They're like, and they just take off.
Exactly.
So that's
real
happening.
Authority.
And I appreciate it when they're on set because of that. Because otherwise, as production assistants, we are the security, really. Unless the reason they get police usually is traffic. Mm-hmm. Any type of closing roads and shit, that's what they usually do.
Right.
But regular times, they don't. I remember when I first did prep PA, was in Gastown, and it was on Columbia Street. It was the Columbia Hotel, I believe, and I'm on the road. And if anyone knows, in Gastown and Columbia Street, that is like right where it starts to turn to the east end, east side, downtown, and really bad with not just junkies and homeless people and hookers and bad neighborhood, right?
Right. It's notorious. Like isn't it the poorest zip code in all of North America or something like that?
It's got to be. I don't know. It's brutal sometimes, but that day, I had to stand outside on that sidewalk for hours and, watch the guys' cars, watch a couple things. So here I am telling you all these stories. It's hilarious. So the ALM comes to me. I'll just tell this one because this is like really crazy one. This ALM comes up to me and he says, and I just started and I'm trying to impress him. He's my new boss. And he says, how you doing, whatever. And then this SUV, this big, huge white SUV pulls into our parking where we have it reserved. And he says, oh, they're not supposed to park here. That's not us. Just tell them to go move. I'm like, oh, okay. And I don't think much of it. I start walking towards the SUV, and the door opens, and this huge, well, I don't know if he was a drug dealer, but it looked like he was a drug dealer guy, gets out with the tank top on, massive muscle guy, walks over and is kind of doing a little transaction with this junky looking dude. And I'm like, okay. And I walk up and I look in the car, and gangster looking dudes, like, and I look at in the car, and I'm looking, and I'm like, oh my God. And I got scared all of a sudden. I realized that these aren't just normal people. They probably have guns. Like, this isn't people you should mess with, right?
Right.
So I said, oh, you guys going to be here long? And they all just laughed at me and did, like, total eye contact. Like, look right at me. Like, you don't scare us kind of thing. And I was like, okay. And I go back, and the ALM's like, so, they're going to move? Yeah, they're going to move when they can. And he's like, no, get them to move now. We got a truck coming. Get them to move now. And I'm like, yeah, I can't do that. And he's like, what do you mean you can't do that? Go tell them to move. You just got. And I said, dude, there's probably a gun in that car. That's a bunch of gangster, drug dealer, crazy guys that I'm not going to mess with. And I'll quit my job right now because there's no way I'm telling them what to do. You go. Tell them what to do. And he's like, oh, I have to do it myself, whatever. So he starts marching over there, all mad at me. And I think, okay, I'm losing my job. And when he got halfway, and he looked in, and then turned around, comes back, and was like, well, they won't be long, whatever. And he just kind of marched off because he didn't want to say anything either.
Yeah. I can't blame you. I would not want to tell a bunch of gangbangers to get out of here because we're filming our little,
hey, beat it,
little movie. Sorry.
Yeah, I keep going on about these crazy stories, but I know you have a lot of crazy stories. Sure, I'm sure over the years too, because
there are a lot. Speaking of downtown East Side, I've played a homeless guy a few times. You know, as you mentioned, the beard. Yeah. So sometimes they'll make me a homeless guy. Now they give me this cart, and it's got the all this stuff in there. You know what's funny about the props? Whenever you're a homeless guy, they always put a computer monitor in your cart. Yeah. You know, it's like, why? And it's one of the old ones too, the old big box monitors. I'm like, why would a homeless guy want this? Like, nobody wants those. You can't give them away.
Well, actually, all the stuff in those things when props put it together is stuff that a homeless guy wouldn't keep. Like, they would keep tarps and clothes and things that they would use, not just random, like.
Yeah, sometimes there's some like cans in there, and I was like, oh yeah, this makes sense.
But electric alarm clock and stuff, like.
But it looks good on camera, right?
Right.
You know, it makes sense. But so I'm going down this alley, and then I see, they've blocked off the alley, so the real street guys, they're not there, but I see them a couple blocks up, and now they see me looking pretty homeless, pushing a cart down the alley that they just got kicked out of. And they're looking at me like, what is this guy doing? How come he gets to be in our alley? This is our turf, And but I think they figure it out once they yell cut, and I walk away, and but also craft service, right? They'll I'll go to get a coffee or whatever, and I'm look like a homeless guy, and they're just like like they don't want me to.
They don't want to insult you and say, but they don't want to let anybody.
Pretty much. So, I've had to get the background coordinator to be like, oh, he's with us. He's one of our guys. And I'm like, okay, they'll let me get some food. But there's been a few times where I've just been kind of. Looked down upon because I'm dressed like a homeless guy.
Oh yeah, no, that one time I PA'd, and it was a big TV show here, CW show, and we were behind the number 5 Orange, which is a strip bar, and there was a scene in there, but in there was also a scene in the alley behind the strip bar, and they had a homeless guy in background. Yep. So I'm PA, and we're all down, like all the different parking garages and everything. We have to make sure that no one drives into the scene. We have to, block the public from ruining the shot. And it was late at night, so it wasn't that bad. But when I'm there, this guy comes up, and I think he's a homeless guy, and he's about to walk out, and I run over and I say, hey man, don't go. We're filming. Do you mind saying, like, I'm trying to not to get him? And he's like, I'm background. I'm like, oh, and so he walks out in the alley as a background guy, and I was like, okay. So fine, whatever. So this other guy comes up, and he's pushing the cart, and he walked out into the alley, and in a different like part of the scene, and they're like, cut, who let that guy walk out here? He was a homeless guy.
Oh, yeah, you can't tell the difference.
And you couldn't tell the difference, no. And you're like, okay, dude, come on.
That's actually pretty funny. One time I was on a show, I don't know what it was now, but it was 50 people or something, 50 background. And I'm I think I'm the only guy who's cast as a homeless guy for the day. So, I got my homeless guy jacket on and stuff. And I go in and I'm sitting in the holding. And then this woman comes over. She's a PA. And she's like, are you a background or, and I was like, no, I'm just some random homeless guy coming in here from the cold. Right. And I was, being sarcastic. I thought I was joking. I thought she'd know. She was like, you have to go. I'm sorry. I was like,
I'm kidding.
I was like, no, I'm background. Go look at the call sheet. There's a background on there or whatever. So she's like, oh, okay. And I made her feel dumb. I thought she'd like, if I was a random homeless guy that came in from the cold, would I say, no, I'm a random homeless guy that came in from the cold?
You'd say, yes, I'm background. Okay.
There was one time where, catering, they give us a stamp, sometimes to, you can get background. Here's your stamp, and so I go to catering and it's like a, 7-minute walk or something from the holding. And I get there and I realize I forgot my stamp that morning, right? It's early morning, whatever. And they tell me to go get breakfast, so I'm going to get it. I get to catering and I ask for, just a fast track breakfast, which is just, bacon and eggs and hash browns and whatever. It's quick. I could get a breakfast sandwich, but I don't want to hang around. So I just get the fast track. Anyway, and the guy looks at me. He's like, oh, where's your stamp? And I was like, oh, they forgot to give me a stamp. I didn't get it. Well, you got to get your stamp or you can't have
But
any
he
breakfast.
recognized you from the day before.
No, this was...
okay.
This is...
New first day.
Or whatever. You get called in here and there. They don't recognize
Right.
us.
Especially background.
Especially, yeah. So I look at the guy and I was like, well, I can go back and get the stamp. It's about a 7-minute walk back, and then I'll be another 7-minute walk. So I could be back in 15 minutes with the stamp, or you could just give me the breakfast. I go, I said, either
Come on, man.
I'm a liar or I'm not. What do you think? And the guy's looking at me, and then his boss, I could kind of looks at me. He's like, just give him the breakfast, man. So I was like,
you're holding people up. Like there's people behind you in line too.
Yeah. So I was just, that was cool. Although they were right, I was supposed to have the stamp.
Right. No, I know. There is a reason for that because of budgets and stuff. I realize that. It's not like they're doing it just to be mean, like we're better.
Yeah, it's like they have on their list, we're feeding 124 people or something. Mm-hmm. And if they got 134 people, now they fed 10 extra people. And they're going over budget or whatever, or they don't have enough food.
Right.
So it makes sense.
But there's also shows I've been on that are like, they're living high on the hog. Like they've been doing years and years. When I joined, it was the 8th or 9th season. It was like way up there. And every year the budget increases. And the year I was on, it was something like $200 million for the season.
Wow.
And I was like, holy shit. And just, I'd see like transport guys walking and they're like, we got wings today, and they literally have a plate, like one of those big paper plates filled, like piled with wings.
Wow. Just for one guy?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Well, this guy probably had a gut as big that you couldn't fit your arms around it. You couldn't touch fingers around this gut. It was brutally.
Right.
So he ate a lot of deep fried stuff.
Some of those transport guys, I mean, it's not really their fault. They're in a car all day. They're waiting around. They're not getting a lot of exercise. Some of them. So,
and I'm friends with a lot of transport guys, so it's not.
But they're always
and
nice.
Women actually, and women. I've known a lot of transport women too.
Absolutely, there's tons of women on set. Yeah, and some shows, they have, like I'm a warrior a lot of the time on shows. At some shows, they have, if it's a woman who's tall, they give her a sword and put her in, and we're in battle together, and I think that's great.
Yeah, no, it's a different eye, and even though it's a cutthroat business, this is the other thing is, if we don't like something that you think is superficial of your face, your eyebrows are too thick, or whatever it is, film can just go, sorry. You don't make the grade. Your eyebrows are too thick, and like really kind of superficial reasons.
Right.
You go, what eyebrows? What are you talking about? Right. But that's the way it is. But it also embraces anomaly people, I guess you could call it. People who aren't the average.
Right. They don't quite fit into a box.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Well, you have a beard and long hair, so you get the bikers, I'm sure.
Yep.
Jail.
Yeah, I've been in jail a bunch
homeless.
of times. Never in real life, but
Yeah.
on a film. My first job was I was in jail on
That's hilarious.
on the Chronicles of Riddick. You know, I was a prisoner, a
That's so
volcano
funny.
prison.
Oh my god.
Yeah, yeah. It was a good job. I was happy. I remember when I got there. I was sitting there in the holding, and I was talking to some of the other background, and I'd never done it, so I had a million questions. And at some point, I was like, I'm kind of thirsty. And the guy's like, oh, go grab something from over there. And I was like, what do you, over where? And I was like, over there. You see all that stuff? You just take whatever you want. And I was like, really?
It's like a 7-Eleven store, but nothing costs anything. You just go take it. What? A Gatorade in the bottle. Like, I can just take this. Oh, just have it.
Yeah.
What?
And I don't even think this was like the actual craft service. This is like where they were storing all their stuff or whatever.
Oh, so this was like yeah.
You know?
Storage, extra storage.
Yeah,
or whatever.
so I went in there and it was like cases and cases of like Pepsis and energy bars and all this stuff. And I'm like, I can take anything I want. And they're like, yeah, if you're thirsty or if you're hungry, you know, get something. And I was like, this is the best job ever. Oh, and then catering. Wow, right? You get such amazing food, especially if you're working on a show, you know, and you're getting the same as the crew and the cast and the crew. It's like they've like there's 6 kinds of salads. Like, which kind of salad do you want?
Oh, every meat. I've been on lots of ones that were like every day there was pork, chicken, and for lunch, pork, chicken, and then beef sometimes, and then sometimes it's lamb. It would depend, but there's usually 3 meats and a vegetarian option.
Oh, and on Fridays, it's like some shows had like steak and prawns and stuff on Fridays. One time we got wrapped right at the end of like right at lunch on a Friday, and you know they had so much food, and I think a lot of the background were just like, you know, I don't need dinner, I'm just gonna go home, right? So they left, and I get there, and the guy's like, you know, I had one of those clamshell containers for food, and I was gonna get a ride, and he's like, oh, you're taking this, you're going to eat it on your way home or whatever. He's like, you know what, here, take some extra. And because there was so much food.
I know.
I filled up this huge, you know, he filled it up for me. He was super nice. I guess there was extra food or whatever. He gave me like an extra steak and all this stuff. And I didn't have much money at that, you know, on that weekend. I ate that clamshell full of food for all weekend. Like, that was
That's
like my
awesome.
meal for the weekend.
Yeah.
And I never forget that. It was like those moments where you're a little bit hungry and you get a bunch of really good food. You know,
I couldn't believe my first real crafty. Like actually, my first movie was The Watchmen, and that was a big show. And
it was huge. I was there too.
Even though I talk about it a bit in my book, and I had to really cut it back when I talked about the food in a lot of shows. The Watchmen wasn't one. They that was like a lot of background. So it was like salad, garlic bread, and pasta.
Yeah,
Caesar salad, pasta, and garlic bread, and that was the food, and drinking boxes, and that was it. And I've had times where it's like, or I've had a bagged lunch before. The bagged lunch are like, oh, we made sandwiches and we threw an apple in there and you're to go. Right?
I've only had a bagged lunch once, only once, and that was like 10 years ago or something. And people, I've heard about the bagged lunches, and I was like, bagged lunches? That never
low
happens.
budge, man, low budge.
No, but this wasn't low budget.
Oh, really?
But we were just way out there in some weird location where I think it was just maybe it was difficult to get to catering truck there or something like that. So we had bagged lunch, and I was like, a bagged lunch, that does exist. But it's the only time, and I've done it, you know, 16 years
I've
or
done
whatever.
it 3 times. I've had it, and
Okay.
I did background for years, like PA background. I loved it background so much. I told all the PAs to do it. They wouldn't do it. They're like, oh no, like what are you talking about? Because they're crew members. They don't want to, you know, not everybody. I shouldn't say that because I don't. But a lot of people look down on background.
That's true.
That is not a secret. Like
No,
this
we're
is the
the
other
lowest
thing.
of the low on on set.
It
But we
is.
are technically cast still.
Right. You're still technically an actor. So there are certain rules in place. They have to provide you with heat. They have to provide you with shelter. They have to provide you with food at certain times.
And chairs.
The chairs. They have to provide you with a bunch of different things by rules, not because of I like my background. I got a conscience, and I don't. These people shouldn't. I've been on shows that has that. These people shouldn't be here. This is, and there's quite a few times the people that handle them, they go to bat for them, and they do what they can to the wranglers and do what they can to protect their background. It's almost like your group of people, because when you're a wrangler, you're the one in charge. Sometimes there's more than one wrangler, but you're in charge of this group of people, and then you on the walkie-talkie they call in, okay, bring in Group A, and you've got to be in charge and make sure they're all there, and then they get on time. So there's a couple different things where you become attached or close to the people.
That's true, and they really do go to bat for us a lot of the times.
Yeah, I want to give it up for wranglers because this is something that another thing is I've been they're on the fence though the background, but in charge of the background, so their crew, and it took forever for them to get in the union. I think it's IATSE they got in.
Yeah, I don't know much about that.
But it was fight back with DGC back and forth.
Okay. One thing, like, usually they're really nice to the background, like, overall. But sometimes on some shows, we're kind of overlooked a little bit, where we're just like, because you feel like a human prop,
Right.
And that's basically what you are. You're in the background. You're not, without the background, it would look terrible. You need to have these people in the background. Without that, the whole movie would be garbage. It wouldn't make any sense. So we're really important in that way, but sometimes, on some productions, we're overlooked. And there was one where we were sitting there. This is the thing that gets to me sometimes. We're sitting there, and they use us for the scene, and they're like, okay, just go over here. And now we're in the corner, 25 or 30 of us just kind of standing there, and we're, they're filming the actors. We're not in the scene anymore, but they're not letting us go back to holding because they might suddenly need us, right? But holding, I remember this one show, holding was only like maybe a 2-minute walk away, and I'm sure it might take 10-15 minutes to get us all back, but we were just standing there in this corner, and we're in the way. There's grips trying to move a big, lighting rig or whatever past us, and we're all in the way, and they're all telling us to be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. And we're like, and finally I just went up to the AD, and I'm like, listen, we're just in the way here. Holding is 2 minutes away. Can we just go down these stairs, and we'll be right as soon as you need us? We'll be back. But we're causing way more problems by being in this little corner,
right,
all huddled together, trying to be quiet. And some of us have to, go to the bathroom, or we're thirsty. Please let us go back to holding.
Right.
And then he talked to whoever the higher up AD, and they let us go back to holding. But why did they make us stand there for 45 minutes just
because
in the way?
It's overlooking more than it is malicious intent. I don't see it at all. That they get so overwhelmed with the work and the hours that they're doing that when someone forgets about you and forgets about that, or it just turns out that way, that is a result of that just fatigue and doing 20 jobs at once. And people need to speak up when it comes to things like that, and usually it gets taken care of pretty quickly.
Usually it does. You're right.
But I've been on shows exactly the same thing where I've had third ADs call background meat props.
Right.
Get the meat props. I'm like, what do you meat props? What are you talking about? He's like, yeah, whatever. He's like so indifferent and so indignant to background. It was unbelievable. And I'm obviously not going to say his name, but I was blown away. I was like, what? These are people. Like, you're going to treat them like crap? That's
Right.
weird. They're here to help you or help the production because basically we're all a part together. That's the other thing. Being a PA and being a background, I'm at the bottom of the barrel, both jobs. And it makes you humble, for one, because you do a lot of jobs you wouldn't normally do. But since you're in film, you are part of the team. But it also gives you that sense of camaraderie and group, because I've had that in background and in production assistant, where I'm with people for a long period of time and we become friends and we really look out for each other.
Oh, yeah.
Where we'd say straight out, hey, go to the bathroom because they just called us. I know you were at Crafty or something. Or we tell each other what's going on and we inform each other and help each other out. I've also been on shows, though, where no one talks to anybody. You come back, and when everyone's gone in the background, you're like, what's going on? And
right. Didn't you get left at a place for like hours and hours after they were wrapped or something like that in background?
No, that was PA. That was production
okay.
assistant. And being left and being forgotten about.
Right.
And that's happened a few times. And I've had some friends, same thing. Like the van driver at the end of the night is driving around. It's called the dummy check, and go around and pick up cones and do whatever. And they're, I forget where they are, but they're way in the middle of nowhere. There's no transit. Like, it's like a 5-mile walk to transit kind of thing. And he drives by and sees this guy. He's like, what are you doing out here? And he's like, what, they're wrapped? He's like, they wrapped 3 hours ago.
Oh, man.
Like,
Poor
you'd
guy.
been left on the mountain. He had to jump in the van with all the gear and just like lay on the gear. Wow. And so that does happen, but it's not all the time.
No, it's really rare. Usually they're very nice and accommodating and everything like that. Just once in a while, and it's they're trying to get this shot done with the actors. It's very important. All their focus is on that. They're not thinking about the meat props, as you said.
Yeah, the meat prop. I know, that's crazy to laugh at. I mean, like, that's just so demeaning.
It is, but generally they don't make us feel that way. That the coordinators, background coordinators are always nice. The ADs are always nice. I mean, not always, but almost always.
Like,
That's a big job.
Catering, if people don't know, catering starts a good 4 hours before call.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know it was that
like
much. 3
to 4 hours, depending on the show, I guess, but and depending on how many people. But I've seen them show up because I usually do prep or whatever. So I was there when they roll the trucks in, and the show's at 7, so they're rolling in at 3:30 or 4, and they're setting up and they're doing the whole thing, and then transport starts bringing the trucks in, and then you're watching and you start smelling breakfast, right? And then and then you smell the bacon, right? And you smell like everything going. And I miss that, actually. I really wish I could go back on set like that because it was so much fun. Even background was so much fun because they dress you up. It's like dress you up for a job. I pay you to put on these clothes and walk around and pretend you're talking to this pretty girl. You're like, and then free food. Oh, you hungry? Like, what?
Sometimes they put you with there was one girl, I worked with her on some show. They're like, okay, you two, you'll be husband and wife. So you're just together, you're your husband and wife and whatever. I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then we work together. She's super nice. And, a couple months later, there she is again. We're on a different show. And I'm like, oh, it's my wife. How you doing? And then a totally different show, totally different AD. He's like, oh, you two. Yeah, you look like you should be together. So now we're together again.
That's hilarious.
Wow. And then I see her again, like a few weeks later on another show. And they gave me a different wife. And I was like, oh, I thought you'd be my wife. I felt like I was betraying her or something like that. And, so we're about to do the scene. And then the AD comes over and he's like, actually, I'm going to switch you out. And they put me with her again.
Awesome.
I was like, that was kind of
Were you like
funny.
holding hands or something? Or
Actually, that one, I think we actually had a kid. I think she had her real life kid there.
Oh, okay.
So we were supposed to be a family, which is another weird thing. Sometimes, there's kids on set, and I've had that before where they give me a family, and it's like, here's I don't know whose kid this is. It's just a kid
like
there.
The guy with the big beard, that guy, he's the dad of the
He's
family.
your dad, right?
Get that guy. You want? Yeah. Okay.
And it's some little kid you never met, and you're like, "How you doing?" You're just trying to make him feel comfortable.
Oh, I know. And the kids are what, 6 hours?
There's really specific rules for kids. I don't really know them.
Their guardians there.
Yep.
6 hours. I've done commercials with children, and it was brutal.
Oh man, yeah, and I think they have they bring in 2 different groups of kids. I think sometimes because they can only work a certain amount of hours, and they bring in a different group for later.
I had really good experiences. I had actually had a child on my production, one of my indies. I did. He was probably a 9 or 10-year-old, and it was my main actor as a little boy. and we did the scene with him as this is him as a little boy, and I was like, okay, and a really good experience. But I've also been on ones where it's a commercial and the child's scared and crying and won't stop crying. They're like, oh, smile and say these lines, and there's like 50 people standing around just looking at this kid and just making him feel like crap. And then they take him out and then they bring him back, and it's like July and it's a Christmas commercial in Europe, and we all have to wear parkas and like scarves and all this kind of stuff standing around at Christmas, and all the snow tarps. They have, the snow tarps they throw on the ground.
Right. There was one where we were doing a scene, and it was basically like a subway scene or something like that. And there was a woman with a baby, and they needed a young baby for the shot. And the director comes over, and he's like, okay, so I can't remember what he told her, but just look this way and do this, whatever. And he this is the part that got me. And he goes, and if the baby was to happen to be crying, that'd be great. Okay, and he walks away. And I was like, what does he want her to do? Like pinch her baby so he cries? Like what did he want?
That's of course, hilarious.
The baby didn't cry at all. The baby was this little cute little baby, and he's like kind of looking at me. He really liked my beard. He kept like touching my beard and stuff. He was smiling the whole time. They wanted a crying. I mean, they were hoping for a crying baby. This baby was not. This baby was cool. He was happy, And most of the kids are happy on set. It's like an adventure for them. They get all this food. They get to dress up. They're there with their friends. So yeah, it's pretty rare that I see a kid who's miserable on set. They usually seem to be having a lot of fun.
Have you ever been scared for your safety doing background? I have a story about that. My story is one time I did a show at a abandoned mental hospital that you know of, and a lot of filming's done there.
Riverview, yes.
And so we're there, and it's this show that is episodic, and I think it's streaming. The show, I don't know. This is in later years when I was doing background. Anyway, so I do the scene, and I'm a cop. And I'm like, what? And they're like, oh, yeah, we want you to drive up in the car with this other background guy. And I've driven, I was a delivery driver, so I've driven my whole life. I really know how to drive. I've been driving since 87. I'm really familiar with it. But this guy, they said, does anyone drive? He's like, I'll drive. And he grabs the keys like he wants to drive, right? I'm like, okay, we must know how to drive. I don't even think of it. We have to fly up on the scene in the car. I'm thinking I'm getting special ability. I never got that either. Low budget. They didn't even pay me for any of this. We had to get out and scream freeze. We're saying something. We didn't even get a credit, nothing.
Wow.
Anyway.
Huh.
They probably cut that out, though, and I didn't go after it. Well, I think you have to go after your own shit if you're,
That's true.
But
there's been some things where I should have been
more adamant.
Upgraded. There was one where...
Well, hold on. I haven't finished the story.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
So it's almost done. So this is really funny. So this is an older gentleman. He's got to be 62. I'm guessing. Anyway, we get in the car. He backs the car up, and they said back it up in the center of this driving area where the loading dock for the hospital was. You could drive up, and it was pretty narrow. It was like 2 car widths wide. Not as wide as a road, but, pretty wide. And keep in the center, backing up. And then we have a walkie in the car, and he says, when I say go, fly up on us in front of you and slam on the brakes, put it in park, jump out, say, freeze, scumbag, or whatever, with a gun, right? And then we cut. And that's what it is. I'm like, perfect. That's awesome. I get to jump out of the car with a gun and stuff. Even though I wasn't getting any pay for it, I thought I was at the time. I'm like, oh, yeah, upgraded. I'm all excited, but it didn't work out. Anyway, so I do it. I go, I get in the car. He backs up, and he almost he can't back up straight. He backs up almost right into the edge of the curve. There's this cement curb that comes up to your knee on either side of this roadway. Wow. And he almost hits it backing up, right?
And he's in a cop car.
He's in a cop car, right? A sud car. And I'm like, or whatever. It was show cop car. So I'm like, okay. And they're like, okay, stop there. Like, on the walkie, stop there. Right? I'm like, okay, I'm looking at the guy. So the guy, they say, okay, come towards us. And he leaves it in reverse, doesn't put it in drive. He hits gas, we go back again. He almost hits the thing.
Oh, man.
And he stops, and he's like, wait. And we heard the walkie. Hold on. He's like, okay, he's got it. So I'm like, he's got it in drive now. I pick up the walkie, and I said, now he's got it in drive. They're like, okay. And I'm thinking, okay, he's flooring it up to these people. Like there's no barrier, there's no nothing. He could run them over if he doesn't hit the brake in time. That's what I'm thinking. Okay, like judging by his backing up, I'm thinking, well, maybe he just is nervous and whatever. Maybe he is a good driver. I don't know, but it doesn't. After that whole little thing of going reverse when you're supposed to go forward and stuff, I was like, okay, I don't know if he knows what he's doing, right? So he puts in drive. We fly up, and then he hits the brakes, and we go, and then he lets off, and then hits them again. So we go like he hits the brakes, and we almost skid, and then he lets off and hits it again. So it's double whammy. He puts it park. Oh man! And I'm like, what the fuck? And I jump out with the gun. I'm like, freeze! Right? And they're like, God. Okay, do it again, but this time, they, give him instruction over the walkie. He's like, okay, I'll do it, right? He backs up this time. He overcompensates way the other way and almost hits on the passenger side now, hits this other cement wall, and gets down there like, okay, stop, right? And he's kind of straight where he has to go, because otherwise he would have to go in a curve, but so he's straight. And I'm like, okay, well, at least he's straight what he's doing. Puts in drive, ready to go. Fly up on the thing. Same thing, but he slams on the brakes, and we stop, and it was like, ah! It was crazy. And then he doesn't put it in park. He opens his door.
Oh no! And
he goes to jump out, and I reach over and put it and jam it up in park. Oh. And then he reaches in. He's like, "Oh yeah," and they're filming, right? Like,
oh man. Do you think he was like just nervous, or was he just a terrible
driver?
driver?
I don't think he drove. I don't think he was like, I'll drive. Like the way he was talking, the way he was, and then when we got in the car, I'm like, oh, I didn't even know if he had his license. I think maybe just. I like to do it. I don't know. He was an older guy. I don't know. Maybe his license was taken away. I don't know. But I was scared for my safety. That was the whole point of this. Yeah. I was like, okay, I'm in the car, and I'm like, we're flying up on these dudes. Like, literally, if he doesn't hit the brake, we're running them over. We're hitting them full on. Mm. And that scares you when you're in that situation, too. But the third time, he kind of got it, and they must have cut the whole thing out. I don't know. But they stopped doing it. And then they just sent us away, and we're done for the night. And then then he didn't have a car either, did I? So we had to take transit together. Oh, man. So waiting to the bus stop with this guy. I'm like, oh yeah, that was wild, eh? Like, what are you talking about?
Oh man, yeah, I've been in some dangerous situations. I remember one movie. It's funny, I never want to mention the names of these movies, but there was like hundreds of us, and we were warriors. And there was a scene where we had to charge down this hill, like in the woods. There's branches and trees, like it was not set up like for this, and there's like a lot of non-union background and everything. And there's a guy who was near the front who I think he had a disability or something with his leg,
Oh my God.
Yeah, his leg wasn't very good, or I don't know what was wrong with, what his disability was, but anyway, he wasn't very fast and he wasn't very agile, right? And he was near the front, so he was. There's people running behind him. So each take, the first take, he was basically like everyone's trying to go around this guy, and we're all running at a certain speed, but he's going half that speed. So we're like, oh man, and then after that take, it was kind of dangerous, right? Because we're almost all falling and we're all running down a hill in the woods. And I said to the guy, I was, hey, maybe for this one it'd be better if you could start near the back so that you kind of don't get in anyone's way, or whatever. I tried to say it gently, and he's like, "What? No, I'm just another background. I mean, he doesn't have to listen to me." So he wouldn't do it. Fine. So we do the take again, and he's in the front again, and we're running, and then he falls, of course, right? And then someone trips over him and falls, and someone trips over him and falls. And there's this pile of like 10 guys.
Oh my God.
Right? And I'm running too, and I see all this.
You're running
happening
at the pile?
Right at the pile. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And I see this pile, and I'm like thinking, okay, either I try and jump over this pile of people. Right?
Long jump. The long jump from school, it finally pays off.
Yeah, exactly. Like, do I jump over this pile of people, or do I? And I was like, oh, no, if I do that, what if I kick someone in the head, or what if I don't make it? Like, okay, no, I got to follow into this pile too, because there's no way around it. There's people on my left, on my right. I can't go anywhere.
And you're all running.
We're all running. So what I did was I turned around and I kind of fell, and when I got in the pile, I kind of stuck my legs up because I knew other people would be falling, and I didn't want them to like, elbow me in the face or whatever. So now I'm catching guys with my legs, like trying to slow them down. And
oh my God.
Yeah. And
so did a lot of people get injured?
Yeah. Yeah, there was at least a few people injured. Right after that scene, I remember they pulled one of those, those vehicles they drive around on set, those small, like an ATV type of
Like
thing.
a little gator.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
That's what they call it, gator.
Right, that's right. So I just see two extras on there being driven up the hill with like broken ankles or something.
Oh my God. Can you imagine breaking your ankle? Jesus.
I mean, I'm just assuming, but they were holding their legs and they were in a lot of pain. And
wow.
Yeah, that show was crazy.
Well, there's been a lot of injuries in Vancouver. There was a friend of mine was telling me, I didn't work on it, but it was another big movie, and they had a scene where they had a tank drive over cars.
Okay.
So these guys were electrics and grips, and there were a bunch of guys who were doing the scene, and there was no real actors. It was a stunt actor driving the tank. They just had these, like, I don't know, busted up cars or whatever, and they just represented traffic, I guess. So there was like 2 or 3 cars behind the tank, and the tank was supposed to back up on top of the cars and crush them.
Wow.
And so when they're doing the scene, there's guys like standing behind the scene, and it was like cement barrier, like you'd see on a highway. When you go down a highway, there's a knee-high cement barrier. Mm-hmm. So they have a couple of those as barriers in between the cars and then the tank. So there's guys who work there that are all standing there, and they're on their phones and whatnot when they're filming. And so the tank goes, already action, and it backed up and pushed the cars. It didn't drive on them.
Oh.
And it pushed them instantaneously right into that barrier and pushed the barrier right into the guys and broke 3 guys' legs.
Wow.
Right there, like bang.
Oh, man.
And there's people that said, hey, don't stand back there. And they're like, it's barriers and stuff. We're fine. This is going to drive over here. And they didn't even pay attention because they were on their phone and it was about work they were doing. But still, it didn't matter. They've broken legs.
Yeah.
Crazy. There's been deaths and stuff in Vancouver. There's been a few that were just
there has been
horrific.
I've known a few people that got injured as well. I got hurt one day. I mean, not very badly. It was a scene where we're supposed to be backing up as a crowd. There's something kind of big like happening, and we're supposed to be like freaked out, and we're all backing away. But for some reason, this particular take went on twice as long as all the other takes. So we backed up way further than we did any other time. And I didn't know what was behind me. We're all supposed to be looking ahead while backing up. And this time we backed up a lot further and actually hit I bumped into a car that was like parked. But now I'm stuck against this car and people are backing up into me still. And my knee got twisted sideways because it was right against the bumper or something. And it was like, I was in a lot of pain. And I went, after the take was over, I'm limping around and I'm like, this isn't getting better. Like this is, So I went and talked to first aid and they gave me some ice and so on. And then the AD came and talked to me and basically I was like, are you going to be okay? Do you need to go to the hospital? And I was like, I think it's just a little sprain. I think I'll be okay, but I don't think I should be doing this anymore today.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, are you booked for tomorrow? And I was like, no. Because there was some of us were coming back the next day and some of us weren't. And it's like, okay, well, would you like to come tomorrow? You could just come sit in holding all day. You don't have to do anything. And I was like, really? So he kind of
paid for a day of you just sitting around.
Yeah, gave me an extra day. And I was like, that's fine. And the next day it was still a little sore and, but it went away. And like, that's as injured as I've been. So that's actually pretty lucky considering all the crazy stuff I've done. A lot of warrior scenes, a lot of battles, stuff that we probably shouldn't have been doing.
Right.
I shot flaming arrows before.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I hadn't shot an arrow since grade 5 or something. Like,
okay, shoot this flaming arrow.
Right. It was so crazy. And they didn't give me a practice shot.
Anyway, I'm glad you liked my book. When I wrote it, I really just threw down some ideas and did it just because I knew a lot of people that were feeling like an idiot on set, myself included, and being there going, oh my God, and you feel stupid. And but you don't want to seem dumb around these people, and they all have this, I don't know. You think they're looking down at you because you don't know. And sometimes that's true, but not all the time.
Not usually, especially like when my first day, I just openly admitted, it's my first day on set. So, and people sort of take you under their wing. The other day I was on a set and there was a guy and, talking to him and he said, "Oh, it's my first day." And I'm like, "First day on ever? Like on a set?" And he's like, "Yeah, I've never done this before." And I was like, "Okay, well, I've been doing this for 16 years or something. If you have any questions or anything,
Sweet. That's so nice
I'll try
of
and
you.
answer." And so he had a bunch of questions, and they're probably all the same questions I had, my first day. So I just answered all his questions, and it was, actually one of my first days. There was a guy who they put me together with this guy. You guys had just walked together down here, and it was a huge crowd. And he said, I said to him, "Hey, let's try and walk over. Hopefully, we can get over there during this take." And he's like, "Oh, why?" And I was like, "Because that's where the camera is. We'll get to be in the show. We'll be closer to the camera." And he's like, "Oh, you're new, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah. So, And he's like, "Well, I don't really care about trying to get on camera. If anything, I'd rather not be. But sometimes they make me." And I was like, "Oh, really?"
Well, if you get seen, that's the thing. If you get seen and featured on a camera and really in a big scene, then a lot of times they don't hire you back because you've already been seen. You've been seen
Right.
too much, whatever. I'd rather have them not be on the production
That's
anymore.
true, and I think that was part of his reasoning. But sometimes, if you're seen, now they need to have you back because you were seen. So
That's stuff that, like the show you're on right now, there's a lot of finite amount of characters. I worked on a space show one time, and there was finite characters, and they had the same background all the time because there was 150 people on board, and that was it. And they always had to be the same people,
Right.
even though there was only 15 actors.
And sometimes you come back for the next season, and they're like, "Okay, they're trying to do something different with my hair," and I'm going, "Well, I've been established on this, over the years, and I've always looked like this. Oh, you're a different person now." I'm like, that's kind of weird. It's a little insulting almost. It's kind of like, well, geez, am I
How is that possible?
Am I that indistinguishable from other people that I could just be somebody else all of a sudden? But when it comes down to it, all I can do is tell them. I'll just say, "This is what I looked like last time. This is what the makeup you gave me. This is the hair I had," and it's up to them if they want to make me look different. Because somebody, a big fan of the show, might watch it and go, "Why does that guy look like this now?" And that doesn't make any sense. He had different, markings and different, stuff. But whatever, no one's ever recognized me. "Oh, hey, you're an extra. I remember seeing you in this or that." Other than people I know that look for me on shows.
I've only had a couple things like that where it was kind of a show call with background where you're on the show permanently and that you're a part of it. And that was because of, it's so funny, it was a show. I used to work at Bridge Studios. So I got to know a few people that worked there quite well, but I didn't work for the production. They were just Jim and Bill and Craig. I knew them, right? And so one time I was doing background. This is after I left, and I walked on set, and the Wrangler was kind of being, he was being short with everybody, and he had a lot of people to take care of, and he wasn't very nice anyway. So we go to set, we do this scene or whatever, and I look over, and if it isn't this guy I know, that was a producer. And I'm like, and he was standing with this other guy I know. I'm like, oh my God, that's the guys I know. So I go over and they're like, "Mike, how you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, what's going on?" Oh, I'm just doing background on the show. And this is your show, eh? "Oh yeah." We start talking. The background wrangler looks over at me and then doesn't say anything to me the rest of the night because I'm like friends with the producers who are like
Right.
above the director, like the people who put it all together. So,
Yeah.
and then after that, I was a reporter and full-time on the show. That's how I got it. And they were like, "Oh, that's Mike. We'll give him a full-time. But what do you want? Like, what's the star background? Because that's what I want." And they're like, "Okay, yeah, we're going to have him be a reporter and we'll have him come back."
Nice.
So I did, for 2 years, I did the reporter. And the third year, I couldn't because I got a full-time job as a production assistant. And I was like, I can't. I'm working, show call 5 days a week as a PA. I can't do it. And they were pissed because they always want the same people.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's much better. They don't have to. First of all, some shows are pretty harsh. It's just the nature of the script, right? So you don't really have a choice. You're just doing the crazy thing they want you to do. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that complain, and they're like, "Oh,
Yes.
it was too hot. It was too cold. It was raining. It was whatever it is. And by the end of the season, a bunch of those people have dropped out, and only the sort of most hardcore people are still with them.
Right.
And they're the ones we want next year because we know that they can handle this. So I get, I've had a few shows that I've been on multiple seasons, and I prefer that because you come back and like, hey, I'm back with all my buddies, and
right,
we're
you
going
get
to
know
battle.
them really good. You get to know most of the crew, and
Yeah, and a lot of people sort of, like we're saying, background gets sort of, I don't know, not well overlooked.
not the respect that you want.
Yeah, but the thing is, a lot of those people are really interesting people because you get stuck with them for 15 hours sometimes, and you have a lot of interesting conversations. Like, oh, this person is, studying like neuroscience or something. You're like, this isn't just a dummy. This is someone who's in an in-between phase in their life, and they're doing a few background gigs here and there, and making a bit of money to do what they're really going to do. It's not their career.
Right.
Other people like me, somehow it accidentally became kind of a career, like 16 years. I mean, they keep calling me, so I keep going. But yeah, a lot of interesting people I met, a lot of really good friends like you. And
yeah, I met some really cool people too. One of the best was I did a show and that I did production assistant on, and I did background. I got called for it. I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. And I wasn't booked. So I told the people at the show, and they were like, okay. And I went in, and the ALM is like, you're not working for me? And I'm like, no, I'm doing background. So he's like, okay. And it was a scene where I'm in a bank. I'm in line. The main actors walk in. They have a shotgun. Everyone freeze! Everyone hits the floor. They walk up to me, grab me, throw me down on my knees. They know me because I'm a PA, right? So throw me on the knees, put the shotgun to my head. And I'm like, and I kept saying lines. They're like, "There's no lines." I'm like, "Don't pull the trigger. I'm doing all this kind of stuff." Right? And they're laughing. They're trying to be mean, right? Because they know me. They're like, "This is Mike." It's so funny.
Yeah, you're trying to get an upgrade or something. They think, but you were just doing what seemed natural. Some background though, they're like embarrassed to be background,
right?
So they're they'll say something like, well, I'm just doing background, but I'm a featured background on this, or I'm getting a special ability, or I'm getting this or that, and they're trying to make it seem like they're above the rest of the extras,
right?
And
well, I've seen union members be like, oh, you're making us do a hard 8. They call it a hard 8, which was basically they sat around all day and they did a little scene, and then they went back down. They might need them later, so they sat in the background thing for a couple hours, and they're complaining that they got to get paid to sit around and do nothing for 8 hours. You're going to make us stay the whole 8 hours? And he's like, well, they might need you on hour 9. Like, it's just relax.
They're paying you.
And they're complaining, and they have the easiest job known to man. As far as I say, I've had challenging times on set. I'm not going to lie. But the majority, like 95% of the time, loved it. Like, wow, I'm getting paid to do this? I almost feel like a fraud or something. I feel like I'm,
right.
What the hell's going on? Like,
and that's the thing. If you're sitting around for that many hours, bring a book or bring your notepad. Right. Some people bring their laptops and they're typing up stuff, or they're studying their classes. Like, it's just like, it's kind of like being at home in some ways, as long as you're away from the camera and you can talk to people. And
well, never bring anything expensive like a laptop if there's a lot of background. That's one of the things.
Oh, I would never do that, but people do it all the time.
If there's 3 or 5 or 10 background, the people, and you're in a studio, and there's certain situations where it's okay, then you can bring it, but do not when it's a big, huge. They call it a cattle call.
Right. It's not a good idea, because a lot of those people, it's their first day on set, or who knows, they needed...
My MacBook Plus went missing. You're like, what?
I've nothing's ever gone missing for me, but I remember the first time being there, and they're like, okay, so just leave all your stuff over here, and I'm like, leave all my stuff, like my wallet and my everything, and they're like, oh yeah, it'll be fine, and I'm like, okay, I guess so. It's just weird. You just don't... Never in your life do you leave your wallet anywhere other than in your pocket, but there's nowhere to put it in some of these costumes. I was dressed as a prisoner. I'm like wearing rags. I can't carry a wallet or a phone with me. But some people do. And you know what? Another thing that's funny is that they'll give you these costumes, and a lot of the ones that they make custom for the show, they don't put pockets in them.
Right.
There's no pockets, and you might want something like, cigarettes. I smoke cigarettes sometimes, and
I had a PlayStation Portable, and I would put it in my pocket all the time. Yeah, and if I had a costume or a wardrobe that didn't have something I could put in, I was pissed because I didn't want to leave it.
Yeah. So I remember one time actually talking to the wardrobe, and I was like, "So none of this stuff has pockets, eh?" And they're like, "No." And I was like, "Oh, couldn't you, when you're putting this together, just put one pocket for us in these costumes?" And she starts going, "Well, it would take a person this much time to do a pocket, and there's this many, costumes." And then she started doing the math, and it added up to all, tens of thousands of dollars or whatever it was. And I was like, okay, I'll put my smokes in my boot.
Yeah. It only costs $8,500 for your request or whatever.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, I guess it's not that simple. Sometimes you think, why are they doing this? It's so dumb. But meanwhile, there's some reason that you have no idea about.
Right. I've had that many times.
Right. So you're sitting there criticizing them. They're why are they wasting money doing this? They should do that. Well, you don't know what they're thinking. They got all kinds of information that you don't have.
Yeah.
When I first started, I remember, you're seeing a crew guy kind of struggling, moving a table down a hill or whatever he's trying to do. I'm like, oh, hey, you need a hand with that? And they're like, oh, no, but it looks like you're struggling. And they're like, well, but that's like someone's job. Like you can't do that. It's a union thing and all this stuff. And you can't help me carry this. I'm like, oh, I'm just trying to be nice, but you can't. There's nothing you could do because you can't help them. It's their job, and it's a union thing. You can't just do someone's job. Then,
well, yeah, some shows are like, don't touch anyone's gear. That's the other thing. Like as a PA, you're not allowed to wheel the grips, cart or electric, whoever's props, anybody. You can't wheel their cart. You can't do anything. You can tell them to move it, but you can't grab it and move it yourself without getting in trouble. People are like, don't touch the other people's equipment because union, because of safety, because of a lot of things.
Makes sense, yeah. And you got to be real careful with those props. Sometimes, sometimes people are just messing around with the props. They give you this spear or something, and people are just digging in the dirt with the spear, and you're like, "What are you doing, man? You're gonna wreck that." And they're like, "Oh, whatever." You're like, "Well, it took." One time they gave me a wrench. It was a fake wrench.
It was rubber?
It was rubber. And I remember thinking, wow, this is weird. Like, they made this wrench out of rubber. Why don't they just give me a wrench? You know what I mean? And they don't, because what if you accidentally hit somebody with the wrench or whatever? And I found it, like, I asked the props person, and they told me how much it cost to make one of those wrenches or something. And it costs way more than a wrench. You just get from Canadian Tire or whatever. So it's like, all right, I got my rubber wrench. That's fine, But sometimes, you see a show, Game of Thrones, for example. There was a scene where Jon Snow, he's running, into battle, and you see his sword is flopping. His sword is rubber sword, and it's flopping around while he's running. And that's a bit of a mistake, I guess, on someone's part. But other shows, like, there was one show where they gave me a broomstick. I was a prisoner, and they wanted me to, like, kick this broomstick in half, like I was going to use it for a weapon. But it wasn't even me. It was, who knows which character it was supposed to be. It was just my leg in the shot kicking this broomstick. And I, okay, action. I kick the thing. It doesn't break. And I'm like, well, that's crazy. This is a broomstick. It should have broken so easily. It didn't break. Okay, let's try it again. I kick it even harder the next time. It doesn't break, but it kind of bent. And I was like, what? And I kind of pick up the broomstick, and I look, I'm like, there's metal in here. And there was like a metal rod in the middle of this broomstick. And I guess it was like a prop broomstick or something.
That is hilarious. So and they're like, go again. What are you, too weak to break the broom?
Right. And I show it to them. They're like, oh, this is like someone screwed up. I think they're supposed to give me a real broomstick, but they gave me a prop.
So did you hurt your foot?
No, I was fine. But after that, I was like, all right, well, if you want to get another broomstick, we'll do this again. And they're just kind of like, oh, no, there's no time now. And we just didn't do it. And I was like, okay, all that was for nothing because we got the wrong prop.
Yeah, I've had that a couple times too. The wrong thing, the wrong prop, or even situations where it was supposed to be raining. And they're like, the schedule is supposed to be raining perfect. And then the day came and it was blue skies. And and they just ran fire hoses on a tree and tried to get scenes with the actors underneath this tree that was kind of raining on them. But
right.
it wasn't good because it was rainbows and it was like people are wearing shorts and jogging by with
Man,
Wow.
or it's supposed to be nice, except now it rains. And now they film all day in the rain, and then the next day they want to try and match that, so they bring in rain towers.
Yeah.
And now you're stuck in the rain the next day, these rain towers, because they're trying to match it from the day before when it actually rained.
Right.
And rain tower drops aren't the same as real rain. They're like
It's so wild
thicker.
actually working in film and seeing it in other shows. There was the Walking Dead episode where I noticed that when they look at one character, he had like water, like it was raining out behind him, and he was water dripping down his face, and he's still like saying his lines. And then they flash to the other guy who's talking to, totally dry, not raining, and you're like, and then they flash to the raining guy again,
Right.
and you're like, okay,
do you
that's
think
weird.
regular people notice that when they're watching, or is it just
I
us
don't
because we worked in
know.
film?
That's what I wonder because I'm sure that one is probably glaringly obvious, but there's other ones too where you point out stuff like the people who saw the Starbucks cup in Game of Thrones, or who
Oh, yeah.
there's people like combing through every scene.
I guess so. Yeah, there'd be a few super nerds who are going to find
If
those
it's a
little
popular
mistakes.
show and big show, yeah.
Yeah. The water bottles. I know it's tough to kind of hide your water bottles and stuff. They're about to shoot, and you're like, "Oh no, what do I do with this?" And you stick it behind a prop, or something, and then maybe someone will come and move that prop, and now your water bottle's there, and you did hide it, but now someone's moved that chair, and now your water bottle's there, and it's kind of not even your fault. It'd be really stressful to be a AD, especially a first AD, where basically it's their job to whatever the director says, is they got to make that happen now. And
That is
anything
true.
that screws
But you
up-
also got to rush them along. You got to go, okay, we got the scene. Can we move? You got
Right.
you got to be diplomatically say you got the scene. You don't need to do it anymore. We're running out of time here.
Right.
Without pissing off the director who's
Right.
in their artistic mode. That's the other thing is a director is like a musician or whatever. When they're in the middle of it, it's art and there is no time. And I found that out when I did my indies because when I was in front of the camera, you're like, oh, we're doing it again. Oh, we're taking too long. Oh, we have to do it again. And the next thing you know, it's an extra couple hours and everyone's pissed off and they're like, whatever. But if you're the director, you're like, we only have this place for tonight. We have to get this scene before sunup. We have to get it. If we don't get it, we're screwed. It's going to
Right.
cost
the whole
us.
day is going to go to waste.
And it's going to cost us 50, 80 grand or more. Who knows how much? And when you're in those shoes, you look at it so differently. And now there isn't enough time. And it's the opposite thing. So ADs, anyone who's in that bubble and in that above that pay grade, it's because they're in a place where they have to make it happen now. And there's no joke. Like,
Man,
serious crap. I stress you wouldn't believe.
right. I wonder if ADs, first ADs, have a shorter life expectancy or something because of
You
that.
wonder that. But hey, just because it's a stressful job or long hours, it doesn't mean. Like, I've known guys in transport who are in their 70s. They do it because they love it.
Yeah, that's true. But being transport's probably a lot less stressful than being
Yeah,
some
true.
first AD or something like that. Man, that would be tough.
Yeah, being the person that's on there and, having to cater to the director. Because that's the other thing is the director this is art. So he's trying to make it as best as he can. And when someone tells him to rush when he hasn't got it, he gets pissed off. And that's the other thing is like, let me go. And I've had other indies where I did location manager and I had to say, okay, we got to be here at 7 a.m. It's 4. You have 4 more scenes to do with setups. We have to move on. And they're like, oh, just one more time. We got to get this. Just one more time. And you're like, oh, and you don't want to interrupt their art. You don't want to be the guy who says, you can't do it anymore. I'm the boss here. Like, it's not like that. I don't want to be the one in charge. But yeah, all those different positions coming together and the stresses behind it is just amazing.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, we talked for a while, and thank you for doing this with me. I
Sure.
appreciate it. I was so struggling. All these people cancel with me, and I'm calling my buddy Cade. He's gonna come talk to me at least about
Yeah.
stuff because we worked together for years as background, and I really appreciate it.
We did, and I was a little hesitant to do this, but why not? I'll talk to you. We always talk all the time anyway.
Yeah,
Might as well
yeah.
just record it.
Exactly.
We talk about all kinds of film stories every time we hang out, so might as well record it, put it out there. Maybe it'll help a few newer people into the business.
Well, that's exactly why I do the show, is for all new people who are in the business, and really give them some sort of knowledge from people who know what you're talking about. You've done background for years and years, and other people I've talked to were in locations for, like, one woman I talked to 30 years in the DGC.
Wow. That's a long time.
Oh yeah, a lot of advice, a lot of really cool stuff, and if you're brand new, that's something you want to hear. You want to hear from those people. I still have to get some real, besides indie directors, I got to get, like, people who do big, professional shows and stuff, and some big time DPs and big time people, art department and stuff.
Yeah, I think you'll get those. Take a little time when your podcast gets a little more well known.
Gets legs.
Yeah, exactly. You'll get them. You'll get them because you're good.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, well, yeah. Until next time, I hope we can do this again. And,
maybe I'll have some more background stories for you.
Yeah, exactly. 'Cause you're on set right now. You never know.
That's true. Hopefully, till February.
All right. Take care.
All right.
Have a great week and weekend, and I will talk to you next Monday. Take care, everybody.